The Islamic Republic of Iran has been effectively decapitated, yet its proxies remain a potent and violent threat. Following the death of the Ayatollah, pro-regime militias are aggressively targeting U.S. embassies in Baghdad and Beirut, attempting to breach the compounds in a chilling echo of 1979. But the crisis extends far beyond embassy grounds. Rather than engaging the U.S. military directly, Iran has initiated a missile barrage against civilian targets in neighboring Arab states, striking Dubai and Doha in an apparent attempt to coerce the region into submission. This assault on neutral nations demonstrates that the regime's current strategy is rooted in intimidation and terror. The Middle East is in turmoil, and the immediate concern comes from a chilling message Iran broadcast globally. The statement declared that retribution will be unprecedented and that those involved in the Ayatollah's assassination, including U.S. leadership, will pay a heavy price. Iranian state media underscored that the revenge is not limited to Iranians or traditional resistance forces. It will also involve newly mobilized supporters. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, confirmed the launch of what it described as the most devastating offensive operation in the history of the Islamic Republic Armed Forces against Israel and U.S. installations in the region, under the codename True Promise: The Sixth Wave. President Trump responded to these threats, warning Iran against escalation and pledging a counterforce never seen before. Yet by the time this statement was released, Iran's retaliation was already underway. U.S. embassies in Baghdad and Lebanon faced severe pressure from pro-Iranian protesters. In Baghdad, demonstrators attempted to storm the embassy grounds, and in Lebanon, a Shia militia, potentially Hezbollah, launched armed attacks on the U.S. embassy. While similar incidents occurred after the targeted killings of leaders in Hamas and Hezbollah previously, those were contained without embassy breaches. Current tensions, however, are higher than ever, and historical precedent raises legitimate concern about hostage-taking, recalling the events of 1979 when Iran's regime initially seized power. In anticipation of escalating violence, U.S. authorities evacuated most embassy personnel, particularly in Lebanon, leaving only essential staff on site. In Iraq, the government remains supportive of U.S. security, supplemented by Marines stationed to protect embassy personnel. Nonetheless, the situation demands close monitoring, given past experiences. In November 1979, the Iranian Revolution led to the seizure of 52 Americans held hostage for 444 days until January 1981. Survivors recall the chaos, fear, and deliberate use of civilians as shields during the initial assault, highlighting the regime's disregard for human rights and international norms. It is critical to distinguish between the Iranian government and its people. While the regime opposes Western influence, younger generations in Iran are increasingly oriented toward global culture and personal freedom. The current crisis, however, threatens to push these aspirations backward as the population is caught between authoritarian control and escalating regional conflict. Turning to Iran's military response, official reports confirm missile and drone attacks on Qatar, Bahrain, Israel, Kuwait, and the UAE. Significantly, the UAE has borne the heaviest burden despite hosting no perpetrators of the Ayatollah's assassination. Within the first 24 hours, Iran launched approximately 140 missiles and 200 drones at the UAE, 66 missiles at Qatar, 45 missiles and 9 drones at Bahrain, and roughly 130 missiles at Israel. The pattern of strikes is not proportional. Civilian populations are the primary targets. This strategy underscores a deliberate effort to create widespread disruption and chaos rather than targeting strategic military assets. Iranian officials have attempted to justify these attacks by citing the presence of U.S. bases in the affected countries. Yet the impact falls largely on civilian populations, including Emirati, Qatari, and Kuwaiti citizens and tourists. Military installations are well defended, particularly U.S. bases and Israel's facilities, limiting Iran's capacity for direct confrontation. Consequently, the regime has opted to strike soft targets, hotels, airports, and residential areas, maximizing fear and instability while avoiding direct military engagement. This escalation reflects a broader pattern of behavior by the Iranian regime, which has demonstrated a willingness to inflict mass casualties both domestically and internationally, to preserve its survival and project power. The consequences for civilians in the region are severe as unprotected urban centers and critical infrastructure face indiscriminate attacks. The impact of Iran's missile and drone campaign is particularly stark in the United Arab Emirates, especially Dubai. Buildings, hotels, and civilian areas have been directly affected, illustrating that military targets are not the focus of these strikes. Video footage shows debris narrowly missing journalists, highlighting the indiscriminate nature of the attacks. While precise casualty figures remain unclear, dozens have been injured or killed within the first 24 hours, all civilians with no involvement in the conflict. Similar attacks have been reported in Doha, Qatar, underscoring the regional scope of Iran's campaign. Beyond the immediate physical damage, Iran is deliberately targeting the economies of these cities. Dubai's aviation sector accounts for 27% of the city's GDP and 18% of the UAE's overall economy, with Dubai International Airport alone generating around $4 billion in direct government revenue. The airport, one of the busiest in the world, has been forced to close for over a day, stranding tens of thousands of travelers and prompting urgent government efforts to evacuate citizens. The repeated targeting of this critical infrastructure suggests a calculated strategy to sow chaos, create economic disruption, and exert pressure on regional governments. Iran's broader objective appears to be the regionalization of the conflict. By striking U.S. allies that host American military and commercial assets, Iran seeks to force these nations into reconsidering their alignment with Washington, potentially isolating the United States. The assumption is that by making life sufficiently difficult in the UAE, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, these states will either push the U.S. to halt operations against Iran or adopt a more neutral stance. However, this strategy has had the opposite effect. The Muslim World League, a prominent Islamic organization, has condemned Iran's attacks on fellow Muslim nations. Regional powers, including Saudi Arabia and the UAE, are drawing closer in response to the threat. Nations that previously maintained neutrality, including Saudi Arabia, have reconsidered their positions. Prior to the operation, Riyadh had prohibited the use of its airspace for U.S. operations. Yet now, the shared threat from Iran has reinforced regional security cooperation. Some countries are even openly advocating for a regime change in Tehran, indicating that Iran's actions have united the region against it rather than isolating the United States. Despite these setbacks, the IRGC has stated that retaliation will continue, warning of increasingly severe, successive, regrettable slaps, suggesting a potential escalation with each subsequent strike. The situation remains fluid and requires close monitoring, particularly as Iran seeks to draw more nations into the conflict. Adding another layer of uncertainty, Iran has reportedly selected a new supreme leader, though details remain scarce. Updates on this development are expected in the coming days. The evolving political landscape within Iran, combined with the ongoing military operations, will have significant implications for regional stability and international relations. In summary, the current crisis reflects a complex interplay of military aggression, economic disruption, and political strategy. Iran's approach prioritizes chaos over conventional military objectives, targeting civilians and infrastructure to pressure allies of the United States. The consequences are both immediate in terms of casualties and disruption, and strategic in influencing regional alliances and international responses. Observers and policymakers alike must continue to monitor these developments closely, as the situation has the potential to reshape the geopolitical dynamics of the Middle East.